better get your book bags out because the Republicans just got schooled. This is why we call you the Godfather. You ran rings around your Republican Senate caucus colleagues yesterday in this special session. Tell us what went down.
Well, first off, the governor tried to, get something going with redistricting. The Republicans were not interested in that, and they claimed they were going to submit a map by September the 1st, but why you would have waited till then, because we started working on one back in, I guess, early July or mid-July, and they wouldn't agree to meet. Then, parallel to that, you had the thing with the judge, with Judge Roush. And let me tell you, I'm not an attorney, so when we have, a Fairfax judgeship, I talk to Dave Albo and I talk to Chap, and, whatever they agree on, that's what I go along with, because that's their profession and they know the players. In this case, I called, a third party, a very prominent attorney and judge in the Mid-Atlantic region. Nothing but great words to say about, Judge Roush. So, the governor, meantime, had called and had one of his aides called numerous times, I was told, to Senator Norment, and, I like Tommy, but he's not real good at returning phone calls sometimes.
Right.
And he didn't get back. Albo was the one that recommended, the guy who was appointed by the Speaker to be chair of the Courts of Justice was the one that wrote the letter and recommended Judge Roush to the governor. So we had to assume that, he was fully cognizant of what was going on. Well, let me correct one thing about how governors traditionally consult with the General Assembly on these types of appointments. I can tell you for a fact that George Allen never consulted me, and I'm pretty darn sure, given the relationship at the time, he didn't consult Cranwell when he appointed Cynthia Kinzer. Mm-hmm. And Tim Kaine never, I want to repeat, never consulted me or anyone else when he made judge appointments. I don't know where they get this, that he didn't call us. And let's say that he didn't call, okay? That's a reason to reject the judge of this woman's qualifications? Are you kidding me? So, immediately I just began, I talked with John Watkins, who was pretty dismayed at, what they were about to do.
Right.
And I talked with him. I said, this is going to touch off a war that has no end. And let me tell you what I believe is driving this thing, John, more than anything else, is there in the leadership, Senator Norment, Bill Howell, Kirk Cox, the intense dislike of the governor. There's a lot of jealousy in there. This guy is highly successful. He's brought in more investment to this state in his first 18 months than the two previous governors did in their first 2.5 years. And these guys resent this, and they resent the publicity that he gets. And they decided they were going to go after him, and they picked a petty reason like he didn't call us. Well, excuse me, I didn't get called by anybody.
Well, it seems a little odd, Senator, and I want to inform my readers.
Sure.
Judge Roush certainly seemed to be qualified, no question about that. And I have a lot of respect for your colleague, Chap Peterson. But I want to inform my audience also. Dave Albo is a Republican legislator, House of Delegates member from Fairfax County, and Dave is a pretty serious guy. I mean, he's not one of these guys that throws bombs or anything. I mean, he's a pretty serious House of Delegates member. Dave Albo, Republican, sits on the committee, wrote a letter on Judge Roush's behalf. So she came to the governor.
He chairs the committee.
Yeah, he's a Judiciary chair, writes a letter on behalf of Judge Roush, sends it to McAuliffe along with Chap Peterson. You would think, I mean, if I'm the governor and I'm not, I'm criticize McAuliffe where I think he goes off the rails. But if I'm the governor and I'm sitting there and I get a letter from the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Dave Albo, I mean, one has to assume that he picked up the phone and talked to Speaker Howell, right? I mean, wouldn't that be a conclusion that anybody would make?
I think he did. And Jane Roush called the Speaker.
And what did the Speaker say?
He voiced no objection to her, as far as I know. I can talk to Bill about this, but as far as I know, and from what I can read in the papers, he voiced no objection to her over the phone.
Well, and the other thing is, normally, we haven't talked to Judge Roush. She's in a difficult position. But normally, when a judge takes an interim appointment like this and they give up their judgeship they have to take it, normally they would talk to the powers to be sure that this is something that is going to go through, because obviously you don't want to give up the judgeship you have, take another judgeship, go down, and now you're out of a job. And so one would assume that she did her due diligence. She's a pretty intelligent woman. And again, this isn't any slight at all to Judge Alston. I think he would have been a fabulous choice as well. But it seems to me that when you get Dave Albo involved, there was credibility to Judge Roush that I was kind of shocked when the Republicans decided to attempt to oust her.
Well, by the way, she called Senator Norment twice. Now, Jeff Ryder, I think I should pronounce it,
yes.
Jeff was quoted in the Washington Post as saying Senator Norman did not remember the first call and ignored the second call. That was a quote from Jeff Ryder. Mm-hmm. So she made an attempt to get in touch with Tommy, but never made a connection, and she tried twice. Mm-hmm. And I remember her telling me she tried to call him.
Well, you got to return phone calls, obviously. But the second thing is Senator Watkins, who was disturbed by this whole thing from day one, and I think that was look. We had who we think is going to be your Senate colleague. After November, we had Delegate Scott Survell on Monday at 6:15 a.m. And he told our listeners right on the phone that Watkins was going to go with Roush. So they knew. I mean, obviously, if Scott Survell knew that, you would think that the Republican caucus knew that. And if he didn't go with Alston, then you knew that Lieutenant Governor Northam was going to break the tie. So it really seemed to me that you guys just outmaneuvered the Republicans, or they were mistaken about what exactly went down here, right?
Well, they may have thought they could turn, John Watkins, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. And what you're seeing is an unfortunate exodus of people who are interested in trying to make things work. And that vacuum is being filled, unfortunately, by some people who really aren't much interested in that. And, when you take a look at the retirements of John Watkins, of Walter Stosh, Jeff McWaters, and, these were guys who were trying to make things work. And I got a feeling that based on what I know, the frustration is ultimately, driving a lot of these good people out. Toddy Puller, she's leaving for health reasons, but it's unfortunate that you're seeing this. And you take a look. I mean, this is what's happening. You had that Saxby retired, the U.S. Senator from Georgia. Mm-hmm. Cole from Wisconsin. These were guys that were trying to make things work, and they weren't getting anywhere. Mm-hmm. Well, look, and I mean, sooner or later, this thing's got to get turned around. Things used to work in this country, 30, 40, 50 years ago, but they're not working now. And it's this can't go on indefinitely, or we're going to have a nightmare on our hands.
Well, look, I thought that we were very critical of the bravado that Governor McAuliffe took on in the first session when he was elected. And, we thought he didn't go through the normal channels.